Right before the cataclysm itself, King Magni had recovered several earthen tablets and used them in an attempt to commune with the earth to learn of the what and the why the world was trembling. Sadly, the ritual was more literal than he thought, and Magni was daemonized, petrified to the spot. It was at this moment that Magni's daughter, Moira, returned with her son and proclaimed him king of Ironforge, backed by Dark Iron's loyal to her cause. This was a bit of political wrangling, something Moira excelled at. See, her son, Dagran Tharazin II, was child of two houses, Bronzebeard through his mother and Dark Iron through his father. This positioned him to unite both under joint leadership. And of course, since Dagran was so young, Moira would have to rule as regent in his stead until he came of age. This led to conflicts and disputes, but rather than even debate the issue, Moira and her loyal Dark Irons instead held Ironforge hostage, including the young Anduin Wrynn. King Varian Wrynn wasn't overly happy with that and nearly had Moira executed after his SI-7 forces helped with the liberation, only sparing the woman with Anduin's insistence. King Varian, displaying the level of political capital Stormwind had grown into in the past few years, arbitrated for the Dwarven people and ordered the creation of a council to represent all three clans equally. Thus was forged the Council of Three Hammers: Muradin of Bronzebeard, Falstad of Wildhammer, and Moira of Dark Iron. With all that resolved, that led to some problems for the Gnomes. The Gnomish people had bowed out of the Third War, primarily to deal with a massive Trogg invasion that had plagued their underground city of Gnomragan. While the Gnomes had superior equipment, the Troggs not only had numbers, but were fighting in familiar territory, burrowing and digging around and through every defense the Gnomes deployed. The High Tinker, Gelbin Mekatork, and his closest advisor, Sicko Thermoplug, devised a plan to irradiate the city, flushing the Troggs out in one fell swoop. This plan went about as one can expect. A huge portion of the Gnomish population inside died. Few survivors fled. Some were turned into mutated leper gnomes, their minds destroyed in the process, including Thermoplug. Oh, and to top it all off, most of the Troggs were seemingly unaffected by the radiation. This culminated, in more modern times, in Operation Gnomragan, a massive push to make inroads in reclaiming their home. Thermoplug, now styling himself the King of Gnomragan, had spent the intervening years entrenching himself, making Operation Gnomragan somewhat less than successful. They were able to take the surface, however, and use their new foothold in preparation to send an elite strike team of champions into the city proper, supported by the Survivor Assistance Facilitation Expedition. Grubbus and his pet Chomper mutated from the radioactive gas, growing larger and deadlier, leading to Thermoplug using them as something of a guard dog. Some of the water elementals that used to reside in Gnomragan's waterways became infested as well, leaving them in agony and desperate to release their torment on anyone who crosses their path. Thermoplug, for all his savvy, is not a very wise gnome. He often loses interest in a project while he's working on it, such as with the Electrocutioner 6000, which has killed more of its own pilots than intruders. The Crowd Pummeler 960 is a remnant of a bygone era, back when gnomes would build bots to battle each other for sport. One of the best of the sport, Oglethorpe Obnauticus, inventor of the Mecha Chickens, had his design stolen, modified, and loosed on the populace, leading to the innocent gnome's banishment, much to the amusement of the actual thief, Thermoplug. The self-styled King of Gnomes has always chafed under his superiors, believing he and he alone deserves admiration and recognition for his unmitigated genius. It is possible, indeed likely, that he listened to Dark Iron infiltrators before all this began, leading to the initial Trogg invasion as well as his role in the loss of the city. While fond of his explosions, Thermoplug was no match for seasoned champions and was at last slain, pacifying Gnomragan for good. While gnomish issues were settled, the Dwarves of Dún Morogh were having their own problems. Yetis and Frostmane trolls harassed Kuranos with increasing boldness, but the real issues were at Gol Balar Quarry. The quarry was attacked by Troggs and sabotaged by Dark Irons, seeking to cripple Ironforge's infrastructure for an assault on the Ironforge airfield. Moira was brought to task, but for all her conniving, she was not behind this. Rather, in private, she admitted that her control over the Dark Irons was not as unified as she'd like to admit, with many still loyally serving the Fire Lords and the Twilight's Hammer. The local ambassador under Moira was the true culprit here, a member of the Dark Iron Senate back in Shadowforge City, indicative of the problems Moira faced on both fronts, as he insisted a half-breed such as Dagran would never be fit to rule the Dark Iron, a sentiment shared by many of his Bronzebeard contemporaries. Sabotage resolved, the dwarves could at last redirect their efforts towards the ever-expanding Twilight's Hammer.